But I never did take her to the hospital once,
That's strange, you miss it every time.
Yeah.
every time.
Of course, I didn't give a darn. At that point, a woman doesn't care who takes you.
But I'll tell you, she sure did present me with three big, strapping, healthy, virile men, I'll tell you that. They are beautiful sons.
Well, we've had our usual problems, you know.
And Mama did most of the raising because I was out on the road with clinics and concerts and everything. Tell Bill what you used to do, Bill and Mike, what you used to do with the kids on a Saturday night when I was out on the road playing concerts.
This basically started our number 2 son, John, contacted mononucleosis, a very severe case of it. And at that time, the Bell Telephone Company was tinkering around with installing school-to-home communications. And Waukegan, how in the world they ever tested it out there, I'll never know. But I got in on it. And the phone company paid for the whole thing. They wired us up to John's homeroom class. No, yeah.
In the 4 major.
And 4 major classes. And he'd have a talk, it's similar to what you can do I mean, it was very advanced. He'd push a talk button and he'd talk to the teacher, ask a question or whatever, and she could do the same thing to get hold of John if she wanted to ask him something. And he'd hear the kids.
Wow.
He could hear the kids in the classroom, you know,
And he was in his bedroom going to school.
he got good, excellent grades too. And
Went
the
one whole
teachers,
semester that way.
the teachers were wonderful. Twice a week, well, 1 day a week, each of those 4 major teachers would come over after school was out and see what kind of progress he was making at home on his homework and stuff like that. It was really fantastic. But of course, with mono and stuff like that in those days, I don't know what they recommend today, but a lot of protein and things like that. So TV, you can watch just so much TV. And I thought we're going to have something different on Saturday nights. So I'd set up the dining room very formal with the good crystal and dinnerware and sterling silver and candles and the whole schmear. And put the stereo on, we'd have some music. And I would say every Saturday night we had what I call dinner at the Ritz. And one of John's favorite things was ribeye steaks. So it was that, you know, I mean, a fancy meal with dessert and the whole bit. They really looked forward to it. It was something different for them too, because I couldn't take John out.
I know, Rich had hepatitis in November.
Oh, he did?
Oh, I didn't
You
know.
can't go out, nobody cut in. What do you do?
You're just
That's
there.
right.
You're just there. Thank the Lord for TV though in that particular time, because it did provide some entertainment for a young kid, you know, who's used to running around.
That's fairly contagious disease. Nobody else in the family caught it then, I don't guess.
Did
No,
y'all take
fortunately
gamma
not.
globulin shots?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, I remember I got my best one when I was my heaviest. And they give it to you, the amount
According
they
to weight?
give you is according to weight. I got a thing about that big for gamma globulin. Everybody else got one like this. Me, boy, I really got one.
Well, now also one of your sons, you told me one time when he was born, had a problem eating
That's
was
food.
John.
The same one,
I remember that was a
He
real
had what
hassle
they
for
call
him.
a pyloric stenosis, which is simply the valve from the stomach to the intestines is paralyzed and allows no food to pass through. So it was through forced, well, I'll tell you what, the stuff that I fed him out of a bottle at that age, he was, by the time they discovered what he really was wrong with him, he was a little too weak to operate on. Now, they'll operate the day they're born or the day after, because they can discover it just like this. And it's a very minor thing. But the stuff that I had to put in his bottle,
Well, we
that
started.
finally got so thick that it really almost took a teaspoon. I'd have to make nipple holes.
I took a
huge
needle
nipple.
and heated it and burned the holes in the nipple so big so he could suck that food through there.
And
And
fortunately,
she
that
held him on
worked.
his right side in her lap and fed him. And when that valve finally forced open, he turned black, almost black. And I never heard such screaming in my life. In fact, I had to walk out of the house. But it finally forced that valve open. If that hadn't worked, we'd have lost him. And she sat for 72 hours in a rocking chair with that child in her arms, laying on his right side. And if she had to go to the bathroom, I'd pick him up and hold him there while she'd go to the bathroom. Then I'd put him back in her lap. 72 hours. The doctor said had it not been for her, we'd have lost him.
Oh, and the good Lord.
Oh, yeah, he usually has a little bit to do with
Yeah.
a lot of things.
He certainly has turned out healthy now, though.
Oh,
Because when I saw him last week, I haven't seen anybody in much better shape than that.
oh my. And does he love to eat?
Yeah,
Yeah.
does that for sure.
I would have hated to have seen the bill for him eating after he finished that full day of skiing.
Oh. I'll tell you, you know, we'd go out and go up to the skiing area in Ruidoso and always wound up in the bar in the lodge and had a few drinks, and by the time they were through skiing and all that exercise and a few belts, one of the restaurants in Ruidoso caught hell, I'll tell you that. With practically, just open it up and say, bring us one of these.
So then what were you doing when Bubba was born? You were on the road?
No, I was working in
Chicago.
I
Chicago.
was in Chicago.
Well, he finally went to work at CBS for Caesar Petrillo. It was Johnny Petrillo's brother. Caesar, one of the nicest men I have ever met.
Caesar and Jeannie, his wife, were
Beautiful people.
two of the finest people I ever met in my life.
And
God rest his soul.
he allowed Don time off anytime he had to go out on a concert tour. But still stay on staff. They had a show at night called In Town Tonight, was that what it was?
Let me ask too, didn't y'all live, was this in Chicago?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Didn't y'all live a long way out
Well,
down?
45 miles away.
So it took you a long time to get in and out, and it was a morning show when you did
Well,
the
I
morning
got
show.
up, for 9.5 years, I got up at 4:30 in the morning. And if I took the train, I caught the 5:15 train, and if I drove, I left about 5:45 to get there for a 7 o'clock rehearsal and go on the air at 8 o'clock.
And how long did you do that?
9.5 years.
Wow.
Do you remember, what were the dates on that? It was like, yeah.
Well, from when I left Les Brown in 45 through 54, I guess.
How'd you warm up that early every day?
Bill, let me tell you something. I tried for 9.5 years to get up a pucker at 7 o'clock in the morning and never did make it. Thank God, by the time 8 o'clock rolled around, I was warmed up to go on the air, you know. But I'll never forget one time, I walked in across the street. I got there early in the 5:15 train. It used to get in about 6:15 or something like that with the stops it made. And I'd usually stop in and have a bite to eat or a cup of coffee or something. And I walked in a restaurant, and way back in the back of the restaurant, I saw a guy sitting there with this whole table full of food in front of me. It was Louis Armstrong. And I went back and I sat down and started talking to him because I had recorded 4 sides with him in Chicago with a big band. And we started talking, and we were talking and talking and talking and talking. So I finally said, well, Louis, I gotta get going. I gotta do a show. Be good, baby. I love you, you know, and I shook hands with him. I walked over and walked into the theater where we were doing the show, and I hear the band going, dum ticka bum bum ticka bum bum ticka bum bum, last call for breakfast. I had talked to him through the whole rehearsal and 3/4 of the show. I made the last 15 minutes of the show.
Well, it must've been interesting to talk to him.
Oh, what a great guy. You know, I've been so fortunate, Bill, and Dory too, in having met so many of the, and gotten to know so many of the big entertainers in the business. And a lot of times you hesitate to even say you know them because people are going to think you're, you know,
Name drop.
full of hot air or a name dropper or something like that. But we really have been very, very fortunate to. Well, just the other day, I talked for about a half hour on the phone with Louis Belson, who's, God, how good can you get, you know. And one of the dearest friends that she's got is Louis's wife, Pearl Bailey.
She's a wonderful person.
I can tell you a little story about Frank Sinatra. You want to hear it?
Sure.
You know, you've heard a lot of adverse things said about Frank. Well, when I was in the Navy, Tommy Dorsey had a show on radio for Raleigh Cigarettes called A Star in Uniform. Traveled all around the country. It was on once a week. And the star of the show was somebody in uniform. Well, they had a contest at Great Lakes for their favorite entertainer among all the trainees there. We had about 150,000 of them in training at all times there. And I think somebody patted the ballot box or something, and I won the thing. So I went down to do the show with Tommy in Studio A at the Merchandise Mart on NBC. And well, at that time there was no ABC. It was NBC, the Red and the Blue Network. Then the Blue Network split off and became ABC. So I'll never forget, I sang and played that tune Sunday that I used to do with Les Brown before the war. And I had the chart and everything. And my mom and dad were visiting me at the time. And they came down to see the show with me. And my mother was a very handsome woman, wasn't she?
Indeed.
Very attractive woman. And Frank Sinatra was singing with the band. And they were appearing at the Panther Room of the College Inn and the Sherman Hotel in Chicago. That's where all the big bands played, either there or the Black Hawk. So after the program was over, Frank walked over to my mother and took her hand like this and said, "You're my girl tonight, Helen." And my dad followed along like a little puppy dog, you know. So that whole night he lit her cigarettes, he got drinks for her, he danced with her, he sang to her, everything. Now through circumstances, I didn't see Frank Sinatra for 20 years after that. So I was working in Las Vegas with my band at the Riviera Hotel, and Frank was playing at the Sands, and I went over to the Sands after one of my shows. And he was standing there in the casino, and I walked up behind him and I tapped him on the shoulder and I said, "Frank," and he turned around and I stuck out my hand and I said, and he said, "Stop." He backed up, he looked at me, he said, "You're Don Jacoby. I remember you. How's my girl Helen?" 20 years later. And wanted to know all about my mom and everything. And every time Frank Sinatra Jr. comes to town now, he comes up to me, he kisses me here, he says, "That's from me." He kisses me here and says, "That's from the old man I just left him." Frank Sr. always says, when you see Jake, give him a kiss for him.
They're both the nicest guys to work with for musicians.
You've worked
I worked with Frank Sinatra Jr.
Isn't he a sweetheart?
Just incredible.
And Frank Sr., well, he couldn't have such terrific kids, you know, if he weren't a fine gentleman.
Well, there's so many things that Frank has done that nobody ever knows about, and I mean beautiful, helpful things. Like, for instance, there was a young bartender in Waukegan. What was that kid's name?
Toto.
Toto? Was it?
Yeah.
And he decided to go out to Vegas and boy, he liked to play golf too. A little short guy, but he was in with that golfing crowd in Waukegan.
When he walked, he was like a bouncing ball going
Yeah.
down the street.
So he went out there and through tending bar and the golf and a few other odds and ends, he got to know Frank pretty well. And come to find out, he had to have, what it was, whether it was diabetes or what, I don't know, but he had to have a leg removed. And he wanted to come back home to Waukegan because his parents and family were there to have it done, but had no funds whatsoever. Frank sent him first class, paid his hospital bill, and I don't know, gave him several $1,000s.
Sent him home in a charter plane. Paid the whole
No,
hospital.
you don't hear about those things.
No,
He does a
gave him
lot of
whole
that.
pocket
you know,
full of
that-
money.